In a big development, the Russians have warned the Americans on naval action in case their oil ships are overtaken by the West. Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Adi Achin. Major updates coming across from the around the world as the world temperature kind of heats up. What we see is that the Russians have warned naval actions over Western ship seizures. As we know that the Americans and of course the French and some European countries have been boarding Russian ships filled up with oil going to their particular destinations and posting them as so-called shadow fleets. Moscow has basically called this piracy-like attacks and has now warned that Russian Navy might intervene with anybody who's trying to do something like that in certain regions. Of course, Russia does not have the capability to do that all over the world, but it can sure try take certain actions in areas closer to itself. Now, we must understand Russian reach as far as the naval capacity is concerned has reached the Mediterranean with its latest base, which is coming up in northern Libya. They moved out of Syria, and they moved in, moved out. It's quite confusing as of now, but there is some presence in Syria. But northern Libya is one place where the Russians are putting their foot down, and they've got a port there. So the Russians are trying to increase their legs as far as their capability is concerned, and most of it's fuel. That's one of the reasons why there's a certain shift in the fuel market, where you see India and some other countries that were importing Russian oil have kind of reduced it a little bit because the Russians are reorienting themselves from the other side. Now, of course, this is a very dangerous sort of an update which has come across, and this seems to be on the larger frame of disagreements between the Americans and the Russians on the matter of Ukraine. Ukraine is getting pounded every day, every night, and what we are now seeing is large scale movements by the Russian troops, especially in the region of Donbass, to kind of clear up whatever is the left is the Ukraine left of the Ukrainian resistance. There are two main towns which are in contention. One is Sloviansk and one is Kramatorsk, which is in the northeastern part of Ukraine, erstwhile Ukraine, if I may, and of course in Donbass, which will basically open up the Russians to the flowing steeps right up to the Dnieper River. In the south, Russian troops have conducted certain operations in the Zaporozhye front, which is making some of the Ukrainians quite nervous. Where there are Ukrainian bloggers which are coming out and now saying that the Russians might just come in and cross the river and basically take up the positions that they had vacated during the alleged counteroffensive of 2023-2024 in the region of Kherson. The rocket attacks by the Russians on Ukrainians continues. There is no air defense that can actually stop that. They're hitting hard the energy infrastructure of Ukraine, and which is being seen in multiple cities where people have started fleeing towards the west because of lack of basic facilities, which are not being provided by the city in that particular region. So there is that stalemate. Of course, there is talks which are happening in Geneva between Ukraine, Russia, and the United States. All three sitting on the table, not as the Americans acting as mediators, which was a very wrong stance right from the beginning, because at the end of it, Americans were belligerents in this particular war rather than mediators. So this whole oil game also comes out of there, and that's where we move into the next subject, which is Iran, where we see that there are mixed signals coming out of the talks between the Americans and the Iranians on the matters that are on nuclear, their rockets, and their support for proxy groups within the region. The Iranian foreign minister has said we've got a framework. JD Vance came out and said, no, there is no framework. They're not agreeing to our nuclear red lines. So this is they are alive, but they are unresolved. And I guess this is what the purpose is. So let's see how this entire thing actually opens out, because I don't find this to be very credible as far as an effort is concerned from the Americans taking it forward. So this the region, as a matter of fact, here is quite volatile, and we see a lot of military activity. Yesterday, I reported to you that the Iranians had shut off the Straits of Hormuz, probably to send a message, but they actually portrayed it as a live firing exercise. So that created a lot of hullabaloo around the world, because everybody's kind of worried about their oil and oil flows coming in from the region. Well, US is also doing something really funny in Syria, where they have vacated another military base, and Syrian authorities have now claimed that they have assumed control of the Al Shadadi airbase in northeastern Syria after its withdrawal from US troops. Now, this also follows another facility which was given up near the Jordan-Iraq border days earlier. So US seems to be emptying out certain of its facilities within the region, which is interesting to me, considering that they're trying to get into a sort of a fracas with the Iranians, which also tells you that this is going to be a long range fracas rather than a man to man fracas going down. Now, this also says that US is also repositioning itself within this region where they know that they have vulnerabilities. They're probably coming out of the place and figuring this out. Having said that, everybody thinks that the US is withdrawing. They've deployed another 100 US military personnel in Nigeria for the alleged protection of Christian communities in the northwest region, where Islamists are basically running wild and doing a lot of nonsense with these particular people. Now, this is very interesting, where there are three major countries which needed to be in the oil game, and this is something I'd covered with you separately. Uh, the oil game is basically the US wanting to ensure that the flow of oil goes through the dollar system rather than any alternative system to as maximum as possible. They can't get the Russians inside at the moment. There was some news that Russia may just come into some dollar trade and stuff, but I don't think the Russians will completely switch off their their money, their ruble and local currency trade for the dollar with the rest of the world. So that's a laugh and a half. I didn't agree to it at that time as well. It is probably tactical on the part of the Russians, nothing more than that. But the US actually deploying troops into Nigeria tells you that they're quite serious about controlling the flow of oil and the transactions thereof. So they're sending messages, and of course the Nigerians have at the moment welcomed this particular thing. But let's see how this goes forward. What we also see in the east, if you look at Japan and if you look at China, yesterday I told you that there is a very strengthened defense posture being taken by Japan, and the Chinese have not reacted to it well, where they are issuing very strong statements as far as this is concerned, and they are not very happy with the way that the Japanese are responding to it. So when we see that this entire place is kind of very, 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 very close to something, and we are getting reports of uh, Iran and USA on the brink of something really, really big. Students are being moved back from what you call from Israel. People are running out of the region. The European countries are talking about the fact that it's too late for anybody to do anything and or withdraw its own people from there. It's quite weird, and it's quite something when you actually look at the overall situation. In While in India, the world leaders are together. You've got the leadership of Brazil. You've got leadership of 20 other nations, including President Macron, during the AI summit, which is actually creating a lot of waves around in China, as well as as well as the Americans. And you can see that frustration coming out from China and the Americans on one mistake that was made by one of the participant universities in India. And we see that they basically created a whole hullabaloo, and a lot of accounts went off, and they created a whole lot of propaganda, but it didn't really work out. So there's that which is happening. Of course, the Indian Navy is also doing an international fleet review, where 70 plus nations have gathered under that, and there is that particular activity which is happening in the Western Indian Ocean as well. Shahbaz Sharif in Pakistan is back in America, probably trying to pay the Asim Munir's bill for the lunch he had in the White House, or in that house that is being termed as the White House today. I don't know, what else to call it. So there's a lot of work that the Americans are trying to do in this entire thing to kind of sustain their activities in this region, and you will find them engaging with various different people to ensure that their tasks are met. And of course, Pakistan at the moment falls pretty close in their overall objective, as when you look at the game of Iran and look at the game of many other places, which is actually in the region. One thing that I want to actually mention across is the fact that the Russians are now taking a little harder stand than what they were before. Of course, this is not coming out of the leadership. This is also coming out of the uh, this is also coming out sorry, this is also coming out of the second rung and the third rung leadership within Russia. And what we see is basically threats and counter threats, and so somewhere down the line, it actually tells me that President Putin will have to take a stand somewhere or the other, because internal pressure is going to build on him, and he will need to act in a certain way, because this whole softness that he has kind of given a little bit shown to Trump and given a little bit of a maneuver space to Trump may just fire back on him in a not a very good fashion. So I guess there's going to be some changes which are going to happen in the Russian foreign policy going forward. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching video. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Please remember, this is our English channel. We will be talking more about international news and focusing in English so that we can project it outwards rather than just remain within India. So please share it with people who you know are living abroad so that they can also benefit from this information. My request to you all also, please contribute, or if you can support the channel, use the QR code, PayPal, Super Sticker, Super Chats, and please ensure that you have the notifications turned on so that I can keep doing these updates for you. Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.